Permission. That's the word that anchors today's guest. And trust me, the way she claimed this word for herself is truly remarkable. Today's guest is Bianca Alba. She was born in Bolivia, and she describes this place as a landlocked country in the heart of South America. She immigrated to the U.S. with her parents as a young child. She grew up in D.C., Maryland, and in Virginia area, and she became the first in her family to earn a college degree and on a full scholarship at that. That drive led Bianca to a master's degree in one of the most prestigious public health institutions in the world, the CDC. Then COVID hit. The job became almost unbearable to handle, which impacted her mental health and her well-being. And during that time, Bianca quietly launched a passion project on the side, a podcast called This Latina Travels, because traveling to her was always a passion. And she wanted to dismiss the ideas that traveling is only a privilege for the wealthy. And then that call came. Her position with the federal government was eliminated. And in that terrifying and gut-wrenching moment, she faced the question that changed everything. Do I go all in the travel business? Bianca gave herself permission to do just that. And today, she is the founder and CEO of This Latina Travels. It's a global platform, podcast, and community, redefining who gets to take space in the world. Bianca shares how her FU fund allowed her to lean into entrepreneurship full time. I have to say, you all, this conversation, I think you're absolutely going to love. So without further ado, please enjoy Bianca Alba and her clocking out journey. Bianca, it is so great to see you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Raymond. I'm excited to be here.
I am as well. And for context for our listeners, you and I met through a community called Luminary, which is based out of New York. And I've had a couple of members of Luminary join the podcast, including their founder, Kate Luzio. And you and I connected through their community. And here we are. I'm so delighted to kind of bring your story to our listeners and to the world.
Yes, I love Luminary. I think I had mentioned it to you before or not, but I'm actually part of the Marshall's Good Stuff Accelerator program. And that's also how I joined Luminary. And Kate is awesome. She's a force to be reckoned with and someone that I admire dearly.
Yeah, I am as well. And she had a pretty cool clocking out story. And I like to start our conversation with a word. And the word that I picked today is permission. And I chose this word for two reasons. One is when I looked at your background and followed your journey of where you started and where you are today, this word permission struck me because it's almost like you gave yourself permission to lean into kind of your new identity, and also the permission to walk away from a decade-long career to do something completely different, which to many people, they would think you were crazy. But the other thing, and I'm really excited to learn more about that, but the other thing, Bianca, is that the platform that you've built is around women giving themselves permission to explore the world, explore new experiences. And I think that as people are evaluating their current situation, oftentimes they don't give themselves that permission to live the life that they're called to live. And there's some reason behind that. And I believe your story is going to help people relate to why that occurs and hopefully provide the inspiration that they are looking for to give themselves permission to do whatever it is that they're called to be. And so just delighted to, really explore this word even more.
Yes, I think you put it perfectly. And I love hearing it in that sense because, of course, I know I'm giving myself permission to do all these things. And as should you or anybody who's listening to this, because we live in a world where, tomorrow is not promised. So we need to give ourselves permission to live freely. We need to give ourselves the permission to travel to just be, happy and live in fulfillment. So thank you for those words. And I can't wait to dive in more into my story.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. Where are you from and where did you grow up?
Yeah, so my name is Bianca, and I was born in Cochabamba, Bolivia, which is the heart of South America. So my parents and I immigrated to this country when I was a baby, 6 months old to be exact. And I grew up in the DMV area, which stands for DC, Maryland, Virginia, not the DC motor vehicles or whatever people always think of. But I grew up specifically in the city called Fairfax. So in Northern Virginia, about 20 minutes from Washington, DC. And that was home for me for 20 plus years. I went to college there. I grew up there. I raised my sisters there. I'm the oldest of four girls. So I could not wait to get out of the DMV. So that is really my story, where I'm from. But now I've been so gone from the DMV. I've been out of that area for more than 12 years. And I currently live in Puerto Rico, in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And I've been here for about 10 years, October, and I love it here. But as much as I love it here, I do miss home, because that's where my family's still. That's where my community is. But I also have built my community here in Puerto Rico. So it's definitely a beautiful thing.
That's a great story. I love how you have this roots in the DMV, and you've left, and it is home, and it's home because that's where your family is. But I bet when you go back, nothing's changed. It's the same old, but it's just such a joy to see your family.
Yes, nothing changes in the sense of seeing my family, seeing my friends. But let me tell you, my university, there's always new buildings. There's always new, all this stuff. So that does always just shock me.
Yeah.
But yes, like you said, it's nice to have a place where I know we'll be home forever, no matter where I am in the world.
Yeah. So what did your parents do for a living when you were growing up?
My parents are hard work immigrant individuals. They worked multiple jobs for us to, have food on the table. My dad was a cook for the longest that I can remember. But then he also moved into the moving truck business. My mom worked for a department store, or something known as Costco. It was called BJ's. I think they still exist. And then for the longest time, she actually was a stay-at-home mom, because my youngest sister had some health conditions, and so she had to really focus on that. So my parents are, working class individuals that taught us, that we had to go to school to be, something for ourselves. And I am very grateful for, for the just things that they taught us, whether or not they had, the college degrees or not. It really instilled in me what hard work meant. And I feel like that's what really motivated me to go to college, what got me my full scholarship, what got me to the positions and the titles that I've had are because of the sacrifices that my parents did.
Wow. So as the oldest of four girls, what did you dream about as a young girl? And what did that look like?
I'll tell you also what I did not dream. I did not dream to be a mom. I will tell you that for sure. Now, of course, things have changed because I'm older, but I was the mom for my sisters. So it was a lot of hard work. And I feel like a lot of older siblings can relate to that. But when I was a kid, just like any kid, I wanted to do something that was so extreme. I wanted to be a singer. And I could not sing. So do not at all ask me. I was infatuated in love with Selena Quintanilla, the Tex-Mex artist that passed away. And I just loved her story. I loved her music. And I love music in general. So that I will say, music to me is healing, no matter in what language or what genre.
Yeah.
But clearly I did not become a singer. But I always knew that I wanted to help the community. And so for me, and for many first gen, we're taught that 3 things equal success when you go to college, right? Medical school, being a lawyer, or being an engineer. I did not want to do anything with math or anything related to that. So engineer was definitely out of my bubble. Lawyer, no, I did not want to argue with anybody. I already argued enough with my sisters. I was I think that's enough. So of course I wanted to do the medical route, because I think that would, to me, it equaled success, and also I could still help my community and stuff like that. But little did I know going to college that the second semester I would fail microbiology and orgo, and I realized this was not for me, and that's okay. And it took me a couple, semesters to try to figure out what exactly I wanted to do, but thankfully I stayed in with the same college. So I graduated in 4 years with a bachelor's in science and community health, which is equivalent to public health. And I learned real quickly that I also needed a master's. But all that to say, school was hard for me. And I think coming from somebody who was an A student, right, in high school, someone coming from a strict household, so I had to do my homework. I did not have a life. And then also coming from somebody who got a full ride to college, right? So I'm like, it wasn't that I didn't have the tools. I just wasn't prepared in the sense that nobody warned me that, college was just for like some classes were just based on tests, or nobody warned me about having a social life / work life / like studying life. Like all that stuff was brand new to me. And so I think like now looking back, especially given the opportunity, I like to mentor a lot of people because I know I would not be the person that I am today if it wasn't for the mentors and the people who invested in me as well. But yeah, so that's what I studied, and I have my master's also in public health.
Wow. So I want to go back. You said something earlier around these three choices: doctor, lawyer, engineer. And
Yeah.
that's so interesting how you sort of connected these three positions as ultimate outcomes. Like, I wonder if you felt pressure, as the oldest of your four or your three sisters. And I just wonder if you felt this pressure to find something that would create value or worth for you, where people would be like, wow, Bianca has made it. And I just wonder, like, how did you work through that? How did that feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, there's 100% pressure. I mean, not only because I'm the oldest and I have my sisters looking up to me, but also my parents, right? Like, I mean, they sacrificed literally their whole lives to move to this country, not knowing the language, not knowing anybody, leaving literally their own like careers. My dad was a professional soccer player back in Cochabamba, Bolivia.
Oh,
Like
wow.
he came here because he needed money. He needed to help out his family. My mom was going to go to college and she didn't get that opportunity. So I have this whole pressure of like my parents left literally everything to give us a better life. This is the least that I can do. Like go to school, get a good job, get a good degree. And it's just unfortunate that in our culture, especially the Latino cultura, like those three things are like what equals success. But we all know that there's so many other things. I have friends till this day that have never graduated college and they make double in salaries of what I've ever made with, a master's degree. So it goes to show that to me, at least now, college doesn't always equal success, but it's taught to us as children of immigrants, that this is the way that we can at least, give, thanks to our parents for the sacrifices that they did.
Yeah. Well, I think the combination of that, your parents moving and sacrificing for you all, and also, sort of this idea of them encouraging you to get a college degree and you going through that and persevering. I would imagine that those two things, looking back, I mean, you have no regrets. It's like, that experience really became a foundation of who you are today. So it's not, it took some time to get to where you are and ultimately find what is truly the kind of career that would light you up, but it wasn't public health, but you went through it and it ultimately impacted who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was your first job like? You get a degree, master's degree in public health. You're now ready to tackle the real world. Like, what was your first job?
So my first job was actually a fellowship program within, my first job within public health, I should say, because I worked a lot of jobs when I was in college and in and getting my graduate degree. So my first public health job was with CDC, which is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Mm-hmm.
So during my master's program, I actually did a year in Atlanta, Georgia. And so that's why it took me 3 years to get my master's degree, because I interned during the Ebola outbreak, and then they extended my internship. And it was a year that enlightened me and that opened my eyes to the possibilities. I have no one in my family that works for the federal government, so I didn't know what that really even meant. But then studying public health, I was like, oh, the CDC is like the mecca of public health. Like everybody who works in CDC has their master's in public health. So I knew like this was like my ticket in. And so when I interned, I learned a lot about the competitive fellowship programs. And so one of them was called PHAP, PHAP, which stands for the Public Health Associate Program. And I got in. And so that program was, you had to work 2 years at a state level facility within the healthcare field. And then after that, you would be like, I mean, you would still be already within the government, but it was like a transitioning program. Mm-hmm. And so I got stationed out of all places in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So imagine, right? City girl, like in her early 20s, that packed up her whole Penske truck because she was like, I'm done with the DMV. I want to get out of here. Went to New Mexico on a $20,000 salary. Let me just say that out loud, because it was definitely something I still reflect on that I can't believe I took. And also credit card debt, because they didn't pay for your relocation. But I knew that this was my ticket into the federal government. I knew that this was something I was passionate about. And I have no regrets. I mean, those 2 years in New Mexico taught me a lot about myself. Actually, it was where I really started traveling solo. And it was a complete new city, and I made new friends, but I also received a lot of opportunities that I would have never gotten. And one of those opportunities was getting deployed to Puerto Rico during the Zika outbreak response in 2015, 2016. And through that deployment is where I landed my job in Puerto Rico. And that's how I ended up here.
I love how that education paid off and it provided this tremendous opportunity. And you literally were starting from the ground floor to get experience. And it was obviously a stepping stone for you to get to where you are today. And as you reflect back, what was in those 2 years, what did you learn most about yourself? You said you learned a lot. And
I learned how to do things by myself. So growing up in the DMV, I had my community, I had my sisters, I had, a partner at the time. I was always with somebody. When I moved to New Mexico, I was single. I did not know anybody but my coworker at the time. And that's it. And so I had to learn how to take myself on dates. I had to learn to eat by myself. I had to learn how to go on solo trips. And these are things that, again, as somebody who was always with somebody, this was hard, because I didn't realize, being by yourself really teaches you a lot of things. And one that taught me I was grieving also a relationship that was a lot, it was 6 years of my life. And so to be single right after that, moving to a new time zone, a new location, I had to find love within myself again. I had to find hobbies that I never did. I remember hiking, what? Yes, that's available in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, but to go hiking in New Mexico, it's a whole other thing. The elevation, the beauty, the nature, it's a complete different, location. And so I had to start doing things on my own. And those things are what really led me to starting to document a lot of my travels by myself, journaling. And I think really that was the foundation of what my business is now. But I didn't know it yet, right? Yeah. Then it was just me just casually posting Facebook albums, casually writing journals and books to myself. But I feel like those moments are what really shaped me and enlightened and pushed me to build what I have built today.
Wow. That's so cool. When you were just describing that, I was thinking of, what if the first job was in the DMV and you were making, not 20,000, but like 50 or 60,000, mm-hmm. and you were presented with two opportunities. One is move to New Mexico for $20,000 or stay in the DMV and make, let's say, 4 or 5 times that. and how, the choice to go far away, be by yourself in a completely different area for so little money. In looking back, it's sort of like the experience was so much more than just the money you were making. And I love how you've documented it. And that time alone is just so precious because it really does connect you with your identity of who you are. And, that 2-year period was almost like a retreat, if you will.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, and plus, like, I don't know if anybody knows, but the Four Corner States has so much beauty. Like, I was in awe with the national parks that I went to, with the native land that I was able and blessed to be invited. I went to like, feast days, which is something like, and this is way before even like social media was a thing, and I don't think I would have documented that anyways. But those moments, those core memories, are things that I will never forget. And yeah, just that's what I want people to do. I know it's hard, but when you travel or when you move out of your comfort zone, I think it's like the biggest blessing that could happen to you.
Yeah, that's such a life lesson there, is that if you are in a rut or if you're looking to make a change, sometimes leaving where you are and moving to another state or another country or another part of the world and almost just starting, it's so radical, but it allows you to kind of do a reset. And there's so much life lessons there. So now you're in Puerto Rico and you're on this new journey. When was the moment when you felt like public health wasn't going to be the career that you were called to be?
Ooh, yeah, that's I think a heavy question, but in the best way possible. I think I knew for a long time, but I was just comfortable. I was comfortable because it's a full paid salary job with all these benefits. I mean, everybody's like dream would be to work within CDC, who has a public health background. But I think what really broke me, Raymond, was when COVID happened. We were the forefront of it all. Like when I tell you, I was deployed left and right because I spoke Spanish, because there's only 3% of Spanish fluent speakers within the federal government. And I'm sure it's less now. But at the time, like they were sending me, I was at JFK during the beginning of the pandemic. I was in Salisbury, Maryland, conducting interviews and self-checks. I was in Ponce, Puerto Rico, which is the southern part of the island. I literally lived in a hotel for 3 months, and I was in the field doing testing from 8 in the morning to 6 p.m. And then we would get back to the hotel, eat dinner, and then start our night routine because we had to create the kits at 7 p.m. So when I tell you I was literally living, breathing, dreaming COVID, like I was going crazy. I was mentally not okay. And that's when I was like, I need a break from this 9 to 5 because I can't be promoting mental health, getting help, doing therapy when I'm not okay myself. And that's how I started my business as a podcast. I created a podcast like I think half of the world did, because I wanted to do something that was not public health related. And it was about travel, and it was called This Latina Travels. But I knew, I think at that moment, that this wasn't for me forever. Am I always going to be passionate about public health? Is it going to mean something to me always? Absolutely. But in that moment too, I knew I had to look for another position. So that's when I also transitioned and started applying for other federal positions. And I ended up with a remote job.
I had a guest on who was a registered nurse during the pandemic, and her passion was always nursing and helping people. She felt like she was really connected to her value of helping people. And while she loved the medical field, COVID, she said, was just another level. And similar to you, she was working 12 to 15-hour shifts daily. Just it was brutal. And she ultimately walked away from being a nurse altogether, after 2 decades of nursing. And she found another sort of passion that aligns with her values of helping people. And it's interesting how, it feels like with public health, you were sort of connected to something that was interesting and it connected with your values. But this idea of what is your meaning in the world? Like, what are you really called to do? And it wasn't that. And COVID was it was almost pushed you to a point where you had to sort of do some deep discovery around, is this really what I'm called to do? And it's interesting that you started this podcast, because I think sometimes people, like, you chose this other field or you applied to another job, but you almost like you're flying this plane and then you have this sort of passion about traveling, and you just said, I'm going to start this podcast, and you're doing that at the same time. That's really interesting that you listened to a voice that was speaking to you, and you were very self-aware about that.
Yeah, and I also got help. Like, I also want to definitely encourage that. Like, I outsourced a podcast editor because I was like, I have no time to do this as well. And I think that's okay too, to admit that you can get help. And I'm so glad I did, because to me it was fun. Like, I loved recording. I loved putting it out there, like the stories that I was able to see with my own eyes. I've been to 6 out of the 7 continents, and there's so much more that I need to put on my podcast. But those couple years that were really kicked off, it meant a lot to me, because I was like, yes, you can live in your purpose and you can still have a full-time job. I did that for a long time. And for me, like, it was also security. Like, I knew that I had to save up money. I knew that I needed, if I did not want to work in my 9 to 5 anymore, I needed what I called my FU fund, just in case. And that's what I was saving for, because at the end of the day, like, I have to eat, I need a roof over my head. And the podcast at the time was not providing, monetary. It was just more for my mental well-being. So I have no regrets. I really liked the way I did everything. And the only thing now is, like, I want to get it back running. It's been on a little hiatus, but hopefully by the end of this year, I'll be back for a new season.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. I listened to one of your episodes, and I love your energy and your creativity and your enthusiasm about the places that you're visiting. By the way, I'm actually wearing my New Orleans t-shirt for you. I'm originally from New Orleans. I live in Philadelphia now. And It is my hometown, and it's such a great place to visit as well. And so I was like, what am I going to wear today? And I thought, I'm going to wear my New Orleans t-shirt.
I love it. I love New Orleans. I've only been once, but we were just talking about that on a trip I was just at with some of the girls, and they were talking about just the food and just the atmosphere. And I was like, oh, I need to go back.
Yeah, it's great. So it's interesting that you decided, though, you started the podcast while you were at the CDC, but you also applied and found a remote job, which it sounds like it aligned better with your work situation. It took you out of the, sort of on the ground with COVID and having to deal with what you were dealing with there. How long did you do that job before you realized that public health was just not going to fill your cup?
Yeah, I always tell people, I think work-life balance is something that is not nearly talked enough. We can't just work to live. And that was the main reason also why I decided to look for another it was a federal job, and it was remote. And I actually was let go from that job last year. And my story is unique with thousands of other public health employees, but my job was one of the ones that was actually rifted, the reduce in force with everything going on with our government. So it was not planned. It was nothing. Oh, wow. Nobody knew. And from my end, I was the only one on my team. So my team is based in Rockville, Maryland, but because I'm remote and based in Puerto Rico, I got grouped into the New York group. And so I was the only one on my team that got let go. And so my duties, my role, my team is still doing their thing, which, I'm glad that they're still, doing their, but I was the one that was affected by this. So it's been a very eye-opening experience because no one prepares for, to getting let go. But I think for me, it's more frustrating because I worked so hard to get to this position. As you mentioned, like I literally started from the bottom, which is like a GS5 within the government, to a GS13, and leadership is a GS15. So I was going to be a 14 last year. And so that's the frustrating part, that I'm still grieving, and that it's okay to grieve over also a career, a job. But I'm also aware, and I have a better sense of like my life now, in the sense that I can see that this was a blessing in disguise. Like I knew that I was capable of more. Like I just came back from a speaking engagement in Richmond, Virginia, where I was flown to speak about building a brand off social media. Like what? Like this is insane to me. Like, and I used to I used to travel so much for work, and it was not fun. Now I get to travel and I'm like living my best life. And so I do believe that everything happens for a reason. Is it easy? No. But like, I feel like if you're living in your full purpose, I do believe that the cards align. And so I think that's the message that I definitely want to share with your community, because it wasn't an easy just transition or something that I envisioned. I still have a lot of passion for public health. I want to continue some way, somehow, whether that's mentorship, whether that's going back into public health in a couple years. Who knows? But for now, I'm choosing myself, and I decided that I'm going to do my business full time. And it's been a journey, but it's been a good journey thus far.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that experience. And what came to mind for me was when you moved to New Mexico, making $20,000 a year. And the question I was going to ask is, when you left the CDC and you started the podcast, I was going to ask, why didn't you just go all in at that time? But you decided to apply to another position and you went remote. And everything does happen for a reason. And it's almost like the universe is now telling you that it's time for you to do this full time. And I guess if you lived in New Mexico on your own at $20,000 a year, you probably are telling yourself, I could do this. Like I can make this happen. And it just now becomes 100% of your passion.
It's a mix of like resilience and / experience, but also the support. Like, Raymond, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, this would not have been possible if I, have a very supportive husband, I have a very supportive community, and I also have my finances straight, right? Let's just be real. If it wasn't for me having like this plan, like I think I would have completely have lost it. And I know I'm in a different place. Everybody has their own different stories. But I just got married in February. I don't have kids, so I don't have dependents like that. And there are many people who unfortunately lost their jobs just like me, who needed the insurance, right? Who needed, to support a family. And so I'm, in a sense, like, I know my story is different and everybody's story is different, but there's also things that are, like I know I acknowledge that I definitely, am in a better place now, but it was because I also prepared myself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you did the work. Like you really invested in yourself in terms of understanding your identity at the core, and in realizing that you're not perfect. You're going to figure things out along the way. You have an amazing support structure who will lift you up and encourage you to take risks and give yourself some grace, and all the things that create space for you to grow as a entrepreneur, as a professional, as a young woman. Like I think that's just so special.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So tell me, your it's been a year and you're sort of still, you've closed the chapter, but you're still sort of, you mentioned grieving. You've no longer in public health. You have this really cool platform that you're building. I love the name, This Latina Travels. That's so cool. What's the journey been like in terms of building the brand, and what have been the challenges that you talked about a little bit earlier that you're working through?
Yeah, the first thing, being an entrepreneur or being a business owner was not in the books for me. I never, woke up and said I want to be a business owner. So I'm literally learning all these things about contracts, about, taxes, about pitching, about negotiation, all this stuff that I was like, wait, what? It's a whole different world. And when they say like entrepreneurship really can be lonely, it really can be. And it's not that, again, like I said, I have the support system, I have a great husband, but when you're building something on your own, like it's on you. Like you decide when to wake up, right? Like you decide like to put yourself in these rooms. And so for me, it's just been really eye-opening to know, one, that I know I'm not alone, that there's so many women out there that are also building their businesses that have nobody in their family that has done this before, but also like the sense of security, right? I left a 6-figure salary with benefits, with all this stuff, to something that because sometimes I'm like, I don't know where this is going to go, but I know that it's going to give me the opportunities. I know that I'm in the right place because I'm doing it. Like I'm going to these conferences. I'm a speaker. I'm building my blog. Like people are leaning into my community. So I know I'm doing something right, but it definitely has been something that I battle day in, day out, whether it's something I should be focusing on or whether I should be looking for a public health job. So there are some days that, I wake up and I have the full motivation, and then there's some days where I don't. And so I just think like balancing that entrepreneurship role is key. But also just being in those communities. And so for me, like something that I wanted to focus on this year was going to different conferences and putting myself into these rooms, because I know that I can't build this alone. Yeah. And that has been like probably one of my biggest lessons. And my biggest lessons is to ask for help, is to look for, those mentors, to not start from scratch. There's people who are willing to help you. There's also investments that I've had to take, like, take courses, like invest in different coaches. Like you need to also, be okay with investing in something that you're fully passionate for. So it's also like that mindset change that I've had to learn myself. So I would say a couple of that stuff.
Yeah. I love the word mindset, because when you're a public health professional working in public health in the government, there's so much identity there. And it started for you back when you graduated from college, and you did that for so many years. And then the shift overnight to entrepreneur, you have this new platform, you have this podcast, like that just doesn't happen. And so, this journey of creating this new identity and immersing yourself amongst other people at conferences that are doing what you're doing, it's allowing you to sort of catch up to where you feel like, like I'm sure there's some imposter syndrome too that creeps in, where you're like, oh my God, am I worthy to be in this room? I'm a public health person. And I went through that when I was early in my entrepreneurial days, and it's real. Like that is a hard, it's hard work.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, imposter syndrome. That was the word that I wanted to say, and I kept going around it. But yes, 100%.
So I'm curious, for those that are, like this idea of owning a travel business, and, you're sort of creating this sort of platform for people to explore the world. How do you generate income for that? Like, how does the company make money?
So I have multiple ways. So I always tell people, imperfect businesses make millions all the time, right? I'm not a millionaire yet, but my multiple ways. So one, I'm a blogger, so I love to write. That I think was like always my heart and soul to my business. So I have affiliate links on my website. I also have a shop page. So for me, like being able to rock like my merchandise, my brand, my logo, like I want the whole world to also rock that. So my shop page brings me some revenue. I am a speaker, so now I'm getting even paid to speak, which is super cool. And then my biggest income stream is actually my community projects. So I work with different colleges and universities, and I host their alternative spring break programs here in Puerto Rico. So this started 2 years ago because of a relationship online. One of my sorority sisters saw what I was building here in Puerto Rico, and she was like, we need to talk offline because I feel like you would be the person to be perfect to host our alternative spring break programs. So again, this was nothing. This was no contract. This was no post that went viral. No, everything was built on a relationship. And till this day, I can say like we have an ongoing partnership with Penn State University, which is one of the top 10 universities in the country. And yeah, so basically I host the students here. I make sure that they have their educational programs, their housing, their transportation, their food. And not only am I, the logistics coordinator, but I'm making sure that these students are getting an educational experience, a volunteer experience. And then to top it off, I'm actually putting money into local businesses. And so these past 2 years, like we've put over $70,000 into local hands. And so that to me is like one of the biggest and most rewarding things that I've done by growing this Latina Travels. And of course, I'm getting paid doing it as well. But to put money into, the island is something that I am very passionate about. And so to be able to do that with my business is aligning. And so I want to continue those partnerships. But those are a couple of the different ways as of now. And I'm sure there'll be more that I am making some money.
That's great. Yeah, I love the multiple streams. You're creating content, you're selling merchandise, you're a speaker, you're on stage, you're sharing your message, you're building community. And I feel like the opportunity for you to, at such an early age, give back, being in philanthropy is something that comes with wealth, right? Like you building that. And so the fact that you're making these investments into your community to give back is, when I think about the word purpose and meaning, to be able to sort of bring all of these things together has got to be so fulfilling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am very thankful and grateful for these opportunities. But I feel like you said, I'm living in my purpose, and I truly believe that, to give back. Community service has always meant something for me forever. Like I remember doing community service since I was a kid, but to now do it as part of my job, my day to day, it's just something beautiful. And I truly believe what you put out in the world is what you receive, and I feel that heavily.
So if you were to script your legacy, is a big word, but 10 years from now, if you were to script the impact that you were going to have on the world, what would that look like?
I think the first thing that I want to just script, or that I want people to know, is, traveling really is the best way to spend your time and money. And I'm truly, I think, a reflection of that. I am 37 years old. I've been to 6 out of the 7 continents, and a lot of these places, I didn't spend as much money as people think. And so I just want to be that reflection that you can travel the world and not be a millionaire. You can travel the world solo and not have to be in a relationship or go with people, and that there are so many beautiful places that we just hold ourselves from going to just because we're scared, or because we're taught, in our culture that, going to places that are unknown are not safe. So I just want to break those generational barriers. And I also want to create something that can impact, right? Like you said, like I love community service. Like I want to make an impact, even if it's here just in Puerto Rico. Like I want to make sure that the money that is being, spent goes to local businesses. I want to continue doing community, driven projects so we can make a difference. Like if we all did community service, this world would be such a better place. And that's the impact I want to leave. I want to motivate people to do their little part, even if it's, coming on to a trip and taking just 4 hours to do community service and them saying Bianca motivated me to do that. Like that to me would be the biggest impact that anybody can leave.
Well, you certainly have given yourself permission to lean into that, and you're doing some incredible work for people who are in a position where they're stuck in a job and they're struggling with finding that permission and are maybe apprehensive of making a pivot. Like, what advice would you give someone?
I would tell them first to find something that makes them happy, that brings them joy. And that could be something as simple just walking or creating a new hobby. I know people start crocheting. I know people start a podcast. I know people start but find something that brings you joy. And don't even think about the money yet. Honestly, like it has to be something that literally you can wake up and you would do for free. And I wish somebody would have told me that years ago, because I feel like, again, we're embedded in a society where like everything has to be about money. And while, yes, we have to eat and we have to have a roof over our head, but we also need joy and we also need happiness. So that'd be my first piece of advice, is find something that brings you joy. And then two, yes, prepare yourself little by little. Every paycheck that you have, put money aside and call it what you want. I called it, like I said, my FU fund, just in case if anything happened. But call it your emergency fund, call it your next chapter fund, whatever you want. But build that fund on your own, just so you have that sense of security. But I would say, honestly, the first thing is to find, joy, find something that you're passionate about. Second, your security fund. And three, community. To me, community has taken my business to a whole other level. Like the people that are within, like not only just my social media, but my newsletter, like they're family. Like I pride myself in knowing like 80% of my followers. I pride myself in my newsletter that has a 60% open click rate. Like it's because people connect with you. But that community doesn't start just because of following or likes. No, it starts because you're building relationships. So if that's what you want to do, like you need to create that as well. But community to me has been a big aspect also of just my life and finding, ways out. So those three things.
I love it. I love the intention there with number one, finding something that you're truly passionate about that doesn't necessarily align with making a ton of money. Like really, what is it that you truly, truly like? And then just start doing what you like, even if it's while you're working. Like figure out time to spend in that thing that you really like. Because I think sometimes, Bianca, people will wait for a moment where, they'll say, when I get to this moment, then I will start doing the thing that I like. And it's almost like they're trying to create this period in time. And you started the podcast while you were at the CDC. It's like you were like, I'm going to just do this now. I really enjoy traveling and I'm just going to do this now. And in hindsight, it's like, why wait, And so the timing of that really resonated with me. And then the second, this idea of community is huge. I think people who are so burdened with their jobs and work and everything that goes with your job, you never sort of get outside of the corporate walls to connect with people outside of work that connects to the things that you're interested in. And so I think those are two really spot on. If you have the community and you're doing something that makes like really aligns with your interests and values, then you'll get to a place where that permission will all of a sudden surface and become real. So Bianca, I've absolutely loved this conversation. It's so, I appreciate your vulnerability around, some of the struggles that you had with losing your job and the pandemic and the stress and the burnout that the pandemic had on you and your career. And I think there's a lot of life lessons for people, who are in a job and they're making six figures and they're climbing the ladder, but at the core, they're not fulfilled. And it's sometimes hard to figure out, how do you unravel that and how do you walk away from that? And I think the messages you shared today, I feel like, are very relatable to what people are experiencing. And to know that you could start something from nothing, whether it's a podcast, it's an idea, and then create, 4 or 5 different revenue streams, and then really become a leader in an industry that you've curated from scratch. It's pretty remarkable.
Yes, I think the hardest thing is just to start. And I think we mentioned it earlier, so many people are just afraid to start. And I think that's the hardest step. Just start it. You just never know. You don't want to have regrets in the next 5 years and be like, man, I should have started it 5 years ago. So start it. And I didn't know where this was leading, and look at it now. It's my full-time business, being taken to different parts of the country to speak, and just continuing growing these different partnerships. So you just never know what one opportunity can lead.
Yeah, I love that. Give yourself permission to start today. Mm-hmm. Bianca, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining and sharing your story.
Thank you, Raymond, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everyone for listening. Until next time. Hi, everyone. It's Raymond again here. I want to take a moment and say a special thanks to our sponsor, Career Minds. They're a global provider of workforce solutions. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, we'd love for you to take a moment and click follow on your favorite podcast app. And while you're there, please leave us a rating or review. It really helps new listeners find the show. And you can also watch the full episode on YouTube. Just search for Clocking Out with Raymond Lee and hit subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to check out our episode polls and drop us a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Finally, if you or someone you know has a story that they want to share about navigating change, taking a risk, or rethinking their career, we want to hear from you. Head to the link in our show notes and fill out the form to be considered for a future episode. Until next time, remember, if you're sitting there and you're just stuck or unsure of your career or future, and you think it's time for a change, I would encourage you to ask these 3 questions. Does my career or work make me feel alive? Am I doing the things that matter to me most? And am I creating value for myself and for others? Until next time.